Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Tony Francola, MVP Syscat Limited, Croatia, who will be talking to you about build a Fort Knox around your Office 365. Remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC18. Don't forget to check out the Resource Center. This is packed with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit sharepointeurope.com/resource-center. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have for Tony in the question window. Some questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and you will be notified by email when it is available in the Resource Center. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Tony Francola. Hello, Tony. Hey, Tony, I think you have yourself muted there. You might be able to...
Hello.
Hey, there you go.
Hi, Shane.
And can you share your screen there, Tony? We'll be able to see that?
Yes. So let me share my screen and hopefully you'll be able to see my presentation.
Super. Take it away, Tony.
So Shane, thank you for the nice introduction, and it's always a pleasure to be here at the US SharePoint and Azure Office 365 community. Today we are going to talk about security in Office 365. We are going to discuss various different features that come along with your tenancy. We are going to discuss some aspects of security that you can turn on and some ideas that you can get from here for your own tenant, so things that you can turn on and check if they have been properly configured in your tenant. This is a high-level overview session, so we won't be able to dig deep into any of these features, but I hope that I'm going to give you at least 3 different things that you might want to check when this session ends, and things that you can immediately start to implement within your tenant. As Shane said, my name is Tony. I'm coming from Croatia, Europe. I have been SharePoint and now Office 365 MVP for 9 years, and I have been specializing in various aspects of best practices for SharePoint on-prem and SharePoint Online that also include security and various aspects of configuration within SharePoint Online. My company is Syscat. We create different tools for SharePoint administrators, for SharePoint Online administrators, and SharePoint professionals that manage on-prem infrastructure. We help you better manage your security, better control your environments and configurations within environments. Our tools are designed to help you be more efficient with your jobs and help you to configure all these various aspects of your tenant in the best way. So we cover various aspects of security and troubleshooting and monitoring of your systems, and I invite you to take a look at our webpage, syscat.com, for more information about the tooling that we can provide to help you with your tenant. So the idea for this lecture came roughly a year ago when I started receiving emails like this one on your screen. So from high-level overview, it seems like a legit email sent from Microsoft, and it includes some information regarding my account in Office 365. But then, of course, I cannot click on any of these mails, but these emails actually, the links that are built into email do not go to the Microsoft web page. They take you to some another web page that usually requires you to send a password. But just briefly looking into this, it looks like completely 100% legit Microsoft email. And when I started getting these emails, I started thinking, is our own tenant secure enough so that some end user is not going to randomly click on one of these links and then provide credentials or other important user information? And that got me worried, and I was not sure if my Office 365 is secure enough for all the users in our company that actually use the system. Of course, for a professional like myself or you guys, it's very hard to trick you because you are immediately going to notice that there is something wrong with the web page where you land and that it's not actually a Microsoft web page. But for end user, it can be very confusing. Microsoft is doing a tremendous job of finding these sites, and if you find any emails like this one in just a couple of hours or days, these web pages are going to be taken down, and people are not going to be able to log in or provide any credentials. But still, there is a gap of a couple of hours where you or your tenant might be in danger from somebody who is going to just provide username and password and then maybe reveal some important information. There are variations of this email going around. They all look very similar to these two that are on your screen. They sometimes include attachments or information about some financial benefits that you might get if you click on these, but they're actually typical phishing emails that try to lure you into providing your credentials or some other important information to a malicious user. The problem, as I said, is when you click on one of these emails, you typically end up on a page like this one. This looks like a typical login page of Office 365. It's designed in the same way as a typical login page from any other Microsoft service looks like. And the only difference here is that the URL is actually something completely different, and there are some various aspects of design that do not match Microsoft's, but that's something that should alert you so that you don't click here and you don't log in on this particular page. So what I'm showing you here is very real, and it's a typical phishing attack. So the process here goes in a way where you just get an email from somebody that includes some information and that actually tries to incentivize you to go to a web page. So this is going to be received by a victim. In my case, that was me. My mailbox was a victim, but it can be anyone in your organization. That victim, if he or she does not recognize that this is a phishing email, she is going to click on this link and going to be redirected to a phishing website, the one that I just showed you. And then on a phishing website, it's typically going to ask you for credentials. I haven't seen any other attacks in these recent months, but typically they're going to ask you for credentials. And once they type in credentials, the website is just going to say error or something else, go to Microsoft.com. So, but at that point, they actually got your username and password. And then from that point, they will be able to log into your tenancy, unless you apply some of the best practices that I'm going to discuss this here today. So a year ago, when I started getting these emails, I was thinking like, what's the best thing to do here? How do we protect our online inventory of stuff? How do we protect our online documents and our online sites? And what is there for us within Office 365 that we can do to stop any kind of attacks happening and to prevent our users from being attacked or being phished? So when you start Googling, you end up looking at the diagram or architecture like this one, and you will see that Microsoft is providing a lot of these services that help you protect your tenant, your Office 365, your Azure tenant, and other services that you might be using in the cloud from malicious attacks coming from all over the globe trying to penetrate your tenant. So the idea here is to just go through various aspects of this diagram and to discuss in more details what you can do for your tenancy to keep it more secure and more protected inside Office 365. So this architecture that's in front of you, and you can download this from Microsoft Web Pages, is giving you an overview of your entire security of your Microsoft infrastructure. But in this particular webinar, we are just going to focus on Office 365 section, and we are going to touch some aspects of Azure AD that are tightly connected with Office 365. So we are more or less going to focus on these two pillars, and then we are going to discuss elements of these pillars in this webinar. So our goal for today is get a full overview of security options from IT professional perspective for Office 365. I'll give you a lot of demos that are going to show how these features work and how these features can be used for your tenant. I have prepared a white paper with all the information that you have today. It's not ready yet, but on your webpage there is an URL where you can sign up for this particular white paper, and you will be able to download all the information that I provide you today with some additional explanations that would be a little bit too long for this webinar. But you can go here and then you can download in a couple of weeks when we prepared the entire white paper for your for this thing. So when we think about security and components of security within Office 365, the key component that we are going to protect here is Active Directory. So Office 365 tenant lies on top Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, and Azure Active Directory gives me entire information about my users, my groups, my everything that's related to security and organization within my company is stored within Azure Active Directory. So that's one of the key pillars that we need to protect when it comes to security and when it comes to protection of your Office 365. The second pillar is Office 365 general settings that help you configure how Office 365 works and what are the security settings of Office 365. And here we are mostly going to delve into something Microsoft calls Security and Compliance Center. And within this section, security and compliance, you are going to see some of the features that are responsible for controlling security. And then our next step here will be something I call individual admin centers. And these also called individual admin centers control various sub-services of Office 365 like SharePoint, like OneDrive, like Exchange, and others. In this webinar, we are mostly going to focus on SharePoint and OneDrive and Office 365 in general. We are not going to go into some other services that are available in the other services, but more or less, you can control additional security for all of these and some others that are also available within Office 365. At the end, we are going to mention a new service that's being provided by Microsoft, and this is something that's still in preview, and it's called a Cloud App Security feature. And this feature gives me a comprehensive overview of potential threats in my tenant. It gives me some additional control and some additional tooling to help me control the various aspects of security and monitor my tenant to check if there are some potential intrusions coming into my tenant. So when it comes to introduction, I don't think any of you needs more explaining why security is important. And with this shift in thinking is where we used to do security by locking down our infrastructure. So 15 years ago, when I started working for a bank, they had an infrastructure that was completely locked down. So their network that hosted data for customers within that bank, it was completely offline. You could not connect to internet. There was no connections between this infrastructure and internet at all. Now with the cloud and everything that's going on, where our data is basically everywhere, where our users are consuming data from their mobile phones, from home, from different devices, where you have additional devices within your network, you need to be sure that you are doing everything you can to protect your data, because your data today is at risk. And various other various researchers have proven that a lot of value has been lost by various attacks that are happening within companies where malicious users, hackers are trying to get information from the companies and then trying to either blackmail or prevent people from actually using that information. The research has proven that there has been $12 billion lost since 2003 in business email compromise attacks. And business email compromise attack is pretty much what I showed you just a couple of slides ago, where a business email is compromised and your data is being obtained. The role of IT in all of this is trying to prevent all of these attacks, trying to find the best methods and the newest methods that can help us to prevent any kind of these attacks. On top of that, the role of IT is also to comply to various compliances and various rules. So here in European Union, we have GDPR, and there are other regulations as well, like SOX and HIPAA and many others that regulate how data can be accessed and who has access to data and what kind of rules and checks you need to implement in order to control all of these things. As I said before, 15 years ago or even before that, we used to just lock our assets, and they were locked within your company and nobody could access those from outside. But in today's world, we are trying to focus on authentication and authorization rather than just shielding our assets within the company. So the entire idea of services like Office 365 is for them to be available all the time, but then we need to shield them properly so that malicious users are not able to connect and not able to get information from our tenant. So we will slowly start with different aspects of what can be done within Office 365. And the first thing that everybody should take a look at is Secure Score. Secure Score is a relatively new feature. It has been introduced maybe a year and a half ago, and it gives me a comprehensive overview of settings and best practices I need to implement in order to be secure. So Secure Score is going to measure or is going to score your tenant for various settings that you might have to implement, and then as you progress in this thing, you will definitely get a better score as you are changing and configuring things that haven't been properly configured. So what you're looking at your screen is a screenshot of a demo tenant. So when you provision a demo tenant for Office 365, you're just going to get 100 points out of 571 points. So that means there's like a lot of various things that need to be configured in order to improve your security score. So if you have a production tenant today, one key takeaway from this lecture would be just go to Secure Score, check your metrics, and see, are you complying to the latest best practices? What has been misconfigured within your tenant, and what can you do to improve your Secure Score? Of course, there are various settings that are being checked. Some of these are being checked automatically. So Microsoft is actually checking what settings you have within your tenant. Some of these are just recommendations that you need to say, okay, I did that, and then just mark as done. And then your score is going to improve because Microsoft is not currently checking all of these settings. I would say that every rule is properly documented. So even if you haven't met this feature before, you can easily go and see what's going on here, and you will be able to basically check what's going on. So let me just switch to my demo. So here I have a demo tenant for Office 365. And today we are going to just navigate through the admin centers, and we are going to see various aspects and various features that are available for you. One information or one best practice or one tip that I can recommend for you guys is there are different admin centers, and sometimes they are very hard to find. So it's my recommendation. It's my recommendation that you either bookmark these things or just try to remember where they are, because they can be very hard to find. One other thing is I'll try to go not just use bookmarks in this demos. I'll try to go through the navigation to help you navigate through all these things. But in order to keep our webinar under 1 hour, I'm just going to, for some demos, I'll just go directly to the web page at hand that we need to show you. So most of these things are available if you go to the admin part of your Office 365. And then when it loads, it's going to show me the things that I want to show you. We are going to explore different admin centers today. One of these is going to be Office 365. Then we are going to jump into Azure AD Admin Center. Then we are going to go back to the SharePoint Admin Center and other parts of Office 365. So these things are spread out among different things. So here I'll go to show more, and then I have a admin center for security and compliance. So that's going to open me a security and compliance admin center. So here you'll see a lot of things that we are going to do today, and a lot of demos that I want to show you. But to start with, I'm just going to open my Microsoft Secure Score admin part of it. You can also use the direct link as well. So the secure score is going to analyze the settings that I have, and as I have shown you already, my security score is pretty low. This is my demo tenant, and so I don't care much about it. But I can go here and then I can analyze what can be done in order for me to get better with the security score and improve with my tenant. So if I go here, I have 36 actions that I can perform. I'm not going to go into details because for every single action that you can do, you can open this web page and then it's going to provide you with documentation, with additional information. It's also going to provide you with information which potential compliances you need to, why you need to do this. So for example, for GDPR and stuff like that. So for every single action, you need to have an explanation, and you can understand what needs to be done here. We are going to talk about multi-factor authentication in just a couple of minutes within another demo. But if I was to fix this, I would just configure multi-factor authentication for my tenant, and then Microsoft would, in a couple of hours, improve my score for 50 points, because if I configure Office 365 multi-factor authentication, then my score would improve. There are many other rules that are related to various settings within Office 365, and you can just go through all of them and see which of these apply to you. So you don't necessarily need to enable or disable features that are being mentioned here, but I would definitely recommend you to at least review your security score and see if there is something that you have missed during your initial configuration and onboarding. And if you have missed something, I would advise you to just try to create a task list or a project for you to improve on these security settings and change things in your Office 365 tenancy. So we are going to our next section. And as I told you, things will get a little bit confusing here, because Microsoft has a lot of these things that are called very similarly. So security score is connected and related to your Office 365 tenancy. So it's giving you information that are related to Office 365 tenancy. But there is an additional security score or score dashboard that is available within your Azure AD tenancy, and it's called Identity Secure Score. So Identity Secure Score is a secure score that analyzes settings within your Azure AD, and it is providing you with information regarding some misconfigurations that you might have for your users and user passwords and multi-factor authentication, again, because that's related to Azure AD. So Here you will be able to see individual users that do not comply to your security best practices and stuff like that. So although it's still in preview, I would definitely recommend you to jump into Identity Secure Score within your Azure AD and check there if there is something that's misconfigured and something that you can enable to make your life a little bit easier. One other feature that is good and built within Office 365 is the ability for you to control and gather audit logs. Audit logs are very important within security because in the security area, because they provide you with the comprehensive information about various activities that happen within Office 365. So it can track admin activity in SharePoint Online. It can also track admin activity in Azure AD. It can track Exchange, other services like Sway, or also activities in the e-discovery area, Power BI, Teams, Dynamics 365, and others like Yammer, Flow, and Microsoft Steam. So all of these activities are being gathered into a central repository, and then you have a search engine that provides you with information about everything that's happening within your tenancy. All these logs are stored, and then you can search through them in case of any problem. If you're trying to diagnose some issue that you might be having, if you're not sure if there's a malicious actor within your tenant, you can check who is performing some additional information, or some changes that are not permitted. You can also track activities. You can troubleshoot if somebody is not able to find a document, then you need to find out who has deleted that document, who has changed permissions and stuff like that. So this tool can be very useful to everybody, and that's something that you should take a look at. What is important is the audit logging is not turned on by default. So you need to go to this admin center that I'm going to show you in the next demo, and you need to go there and configure audit logging, enable it basically. And just a warning for you guys, it's not going to be enabled immediately. So it takes a couple of days in my experience for it to start working. So if you are planning a demo or something to a customer, I would advise you to prepare your demo tenant at least a week or more in advance, and to be actually ready for the demo. So if you are just going to provision a demo tenant today and start auditing, it's not going to work immediately. So just plan in advance. And what's also important, if you are doing this in production environment, audit logs do not go back in time. So it's only going to start collecting data from the moment it's enabled. So if you think you might have a problem with this in the future, today is the right day to turn this on. So if you want to have three key takeaways from this session, I would say security score and enabling audit logs today would be your next task in action. So I would definitely go and check if this has been enabled for your tenant. So let's jump into audit logs demo. So if I go back, or if I go here and open the waffle menu and I go back to admin, I go show more, I go to admin centers, and I go to security and compliance again. So audit logs are hidden under search and investigation. And I have an option here called audit log search. So here I can search for various types of activities. Of course, this is a demo tenant, so there are no actual users here. So my logs are not very big in terms of number of events that I have. So for me, it's very easy to find an event. But for you guys in a production environment with hundreds of thousands of users, you will need to do very good filtering in order to find something in this. So for example, if you are looking into something that has happened, so for example, let's say that I have deleted a file, I can choose an event of that type, delete file, and then I can choose the period I'm looking for, and then I can do a search. One additional feature that is available on top of this thing is the ability for you to create an alert. So you will be able to get an email if something happens. So you can also create an alert that says, when somebody deletes a file, please send me an email or send an email to some service, help desk, or something that is used to monitor this thing. It seems that I have deleted my file before this period, so I'm just going to do a search, and I'm going to show you different and all types of activities that has performed that happened. So for example, you'll see here, and this is my account, that I deleted some search content, that I modified some files, that I accessed some files. So if I'm trying to troubleshoot something, I'll be very good at finding what has actually happened in my tenant. So I definitely deleted some content searches. I haven't deleted files, but I modified some files and I accessed some files as well. So I'll definitely be able to pinpoint to exact problem that has happened and its exact issue that I might be having with this thing. I can also export results and send those results to somebody else who doesn't have access to Admin Center, so that person will be able to further analyze what's going on here. When it comes to audit logs, they are very limited in terms of duration. So Microsoft is going to only to retain your audit logs from a period from 30 to 90 days, depending on your license. And we are going to talk about licensing in a couple of minutes. But there is an option for you guys to extend this thing, and the option that is available for you is called Office 365 Management Activity APIs. So basically here, what you can do is you can create an Azure AD app that's going to be authorized against your Office 365 tenancy. And then once it has been authorized and once you get the access token, you will be able to subscribe to the events that are happening. And then you will also be able to retrieve some of those events programmatically. If you subscribe or try to retrieve those events, you're going to receive a JSON file that basically contains the same information that you have seen on my screen, but then you will be able to programmatically either analyze those things or store them for longer periods of retention and have them for your record if you have a company that's that requires certain kind of retention due to compliance or legal reasons or whatever you're trying to resolve. So there is an option for you. Management API is a little bit out of scope for this lecture, but if you just Google it, you'll be able to find more information about that particular feature. As I said, there are many centers today and many sections that you need to check. One other section that is very interesting is security and compliance dashboard. This thing mostly focuses on content of your exchange and things that are happening within your email. And with a security and compliance dashboard, you will be able to Microsoft is basically analyzing all the emails and everything that's happening. So you will be able to see the number of, let's say, malware that has been detected in your tenant, number of spam, spoofing potential, like the attacks that I have shown you, and stuff like that. So you will also be able to see users that have been attacked. So you might find a user that has left an email somewhere, and this email was retrieved by a malicious attacker. So this particular user gets more phishing attacks. So, for example, I had to obscure this because it's our production data, but I had this one user that got way more emails than all the others containing potential attacks. So as an IT, this is something you need to check and see where this email has been submitted, and is this email available publicly, and why is that so, and maybe just additionally educate this person in case so that he or she does not basically click on that link and get you in trouble of some kind. On top of audit and all these other security features, we also have a content search. Content search allows me to do a cross silo query, and I can go through different Office 365 workloads, and I can then download all these documents and search for them and get more information about what's actually inside my tenant. So this is not directly a feature that's going to protect your tenant, but it's a feature where you will be able to find some things that you are maybe not aware that even exist in your tenant, especially if you're in some kind of a legal issue where you're trying to gather some documents for your legal team. Content search can be very useful for that. So let's do a demo of that one as well. So content search is very close to our audit log search. It's just one click above. If I go here, it's going to open a dialog for me that gives me a content search information. What I need to do here is I need to do new search. Let's say I'm looking for New York information in our tenant, and I can specify locations. So for example, I can choose if I'm going to search through Exchange, Skype, SharePoint, and Teams, and other services. Let's do a search of our entire tenant and all the services. So this typically takes a couple of moments. I'm going to wait just a sec to see if I'm going to be lucky and get the results fairly quickly, because my tenant is just a demo tenant. It's very small. If it doesn't, we are going to come back at the very end so I can show you. Basically, the search is going to create a search, and you will be able to preview various types of documents and stuff within your tenant. You will also be able to download them if there is any legal requirement to do so. So you will be able to download that. Okay, so it seems that's still working. So we're just going to skip back to slides and come back a little bit later. Okay, so third key takeaway for today is you guys go there and enable multi-factor authentication for your tenant. That is super important. That's something that needs to be enabled. It's not enabled by default. And if you haven't done that, go there and get ready to enable multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is built in within Office 365. It's a feature. You can consume it. There is no additional setup required. I would say it takes more time for you to educate your users and get them ready than it is for you to just enable multi-factor authentication. You can further control it by some additional features. For example, you can define trusted IP ranges where people from those IP ranges do not have to enter multi-factor authentication. You can use app passwords for applications that cannot open dialog for multi-factor authentication. And you have you have a number of options available for you to authenticate. So basically, I would definitely recommend using a mobile app from Microsoft called Microsoft Authenticator. It works for iOS and Android mobile phones. But in case your users do not have those phones or cannot install the application, you can also use other methods like call text and hardware tokens if you have those available. So how does this look like? Basically, so when I try to log in, I'll receive a notification on my phone, and then I'll just simply approve the sign in. So basically, if I'm going to sign in, when I enter my username and password, I'll just get a dialog like this one, and it's going to ask me to approve the sign in. And then on my mobile phone, I'm just going to receive a dialog where I just need to click approve. As soon as I click approve on my mobile phone, I'll be on this side of screen, I'll be automatically signed in to my tenant or the service that I have in my tenant. In order to enable those things, you would go to demo, and just a quick information, our New York search is done, and I'll see a number of emails, documents, and stuff that mention New York. So if I'm going to export this, I'll just go here and export everything that I have gathered from our tenant. So if I go to multi-factor authentication demo, this part is being configured on my Azure AD side. And here I have an option for multi-factor authentication. I open that option. And then once this blade loads, I'll be able to do configuration for this thing. Okay, so it's slowly loading, and you will see that I don't have multi-factor authentication enabled for many users, but I can choose one of these and then click enable. And multi-factor authentication has been enabled, and this user will have to then once it signs up, it will be able it will have to log in, provide their multi-factor authentication credentials, and then he will be registered with his multi-factor authentication device. And as I said, I have a number of options available to me. I can choose the trusted IPs, and I can choose the methods that users have at their disposal to authenticate from within Office 365. I'm going to show you a demo where I'm going to really authenticate. Just give me 1 second to show you some other things before we proceed with that one. One of the other very useful things is the ability to do company branding within Office 365. When I spoke to a group of users at the European SharePoint conference in Copenhagen just a month ago, a lot of them already had enabled multi-factor authentication. So I would say that in that group, we had at least 70% of people doing multi-factor authentication. But when it comes to company branding, the numbers were lower because company branding is not so, let's say, famous feature. And the company branding feature basically allows you to do a little bit of branding of your company login page so that your end users get used to seeing your company logos and your company branding, and so that they know that they are actually on the web page of your company and not some random login page for Microsoft Microsoft 365 login page. So this is very easy to do, and it just takes a couple of minutes. You need to talk to your marketing, get some branding done, and you will be able to configure those things. So before I show you multi-factor authentication, I'll just jump into our company branding demo. So that's within your Azure AD. I need to jump into my Azure AD, and then there is an option on your left-hand side called company branding. And here, when I open that thing, I can go here and I can choose my company's profile picture. I can change the demo, the banners. I can adjust all these branding options, and I can also provide some additional information for my users regarding security. I can provide a user-friendly name formats in your own language, local language, so that people that are actually logging in know what they're going to see. Okay, so let me jump back to my company branding. When multi-factor authentication was introduced to Office 365, there were a lot of challenges regarding that. A lot of technologies did not support that. Now, these days, you can connect to any kind of technology and that Microsoft provides, and you will be able to connect to Office 365 without any problem. I'm just going to show you a PowerShell demo. How that works and what's inside it. So in order to do so, I need to connect to my Office 365 tenant. I'm just using out-of-the-box credentials. I apologize, the screens are in Croatian. I have no idea why is that so, but you are going to trust me that I'm just logging into my tenant. Oh, sorry, I've mistyped my information. Sorry, I need to connect to my demo tenant, not my production tenant. Okay, so this is my demo tenant information. And you'll see here I already have branding, so it's my Contoso demo. And if I type in my password, now it's going to ask me, or it's going to show me my information because this tenant does not have a multi-factor authentication enabled. So this is a typical connect to SharePoint. And here I'm just going to get all my sites within that tenant. What I can do now is I can connect to a different tenant. And this different tenant is also going to ask me to log in. This tenant does not have a branding configured, so it shows Microsoft, but this one has multi-factor enabled. And again, it's in Croatian, so I apologize. It says that it sent me a text message to my phone, and that is correct. I got my message here. I'm just typing in my numbers, and I'll be able to get in with that thing. So I just multi-factor authenticated to PowerShell. I'm going to type in the same command, and then I'll be able to get the same information. This tenant doesn't have all the sites, so the information is different. But I got in by just multi-factor authenticating with my tenant. So I show you how you can do that in PowerShell. I forgot to mention you can do the same with your code. So from C Sharp, you can use SharePoint PnP libraries to connect to your tenant and get information. Of course, multi-factor authentication is not without its problems. Just in November 2019, there were 2 or 3 outages of multi-factor authentication, and the people that had multi-factor authentication enabled were not able to use Office 365 in that period. So a typical recommendation for that is to have a couple of, or at least one administrator account that does not have multi-factor authentication enabled, and then you can go in and disable multi-factor authentication while the service is not running, because otherwise your users will have a lot of problems logging in and they won't be able to use the service. So it's definitely, that's a good best practice for the time being until we get something better from Microsoft. And you can also use the link on the slide to get more information about multi-factor authentication state. So multi-factor authentication is just one thing where you can define and define how and when people can connect to your tenant. One additional control that you have at your disposal is called Azure Conditional Access. Azure Conditional Access can be defined as a set of rules that can be used to either allow or block certain users from accessing your content. So for example, I'm based here in Croatia. We have Shane, he's based out of Ireland, and I can then define that if somebody tries to connect from Ireland, we are going to require him or her to have multi-factor authentication enabled. And then for our local Croatian users, we might decide not to use multi-factor authentication or do various kinds of rules. I can even block Shane from Ireland or things like that. So I have a lot of controls at my disposal. It's a rule-based engine, and I can use it to control and configure who has access to my tenant. Let me just jump into our demo, and I'm just let me just open my browser. Okay. So here, if I click my conditional access demo, I can define various rules. I can say, okay, I have a new policy. Just one best practice here. If you're testing anything with the conditional access policies, make sure you are testing that on one selected user, because if you do a policy for everybody and you misconfigure something, you might lock yourself out of your tenant. So just don't do that. So if you are going to block everybody from Ireland, just make sure that you have selected just one user. So in my case, I'm just going to select one user, and then I'm just going to enforce the policy for this particular end user. So for this user, I'm going to choose the apps that this applies to, and then I'm going to say if this user comes from selected location, and that is, let's say, our remote office, I would have to define locations before I can then say, okay, this user coming from a remote office will have to use multi-factor authentication because I need to make sure that this device is compliant, and I also require for this user to definitely use multi-factor authentication every time this user is connecting from a remote office. And you can define various rules like this one just to make sure everybody is following the practices that you have defined as best practices within your organization. One additional option that you have within Azure is the ability for you to control your documents and stuff that you have within Azure and Office 365. The new feature that we are currently working with is called Azure Information Protection, and that's a successor of Azure Rights Management Service. And previously, that used to be Rights Management Server on-prem. So this service out of Azure basically provides me with the ability to encrypt my Office 365 documents. So once they are shared, nobody without proper key will be able to decrypt them. So the content that I'm sharing or sending via email is encrypted, and everybody, including people that are using mobile devices, will be able to open them as long as they have the proper keys to access that content. It also provides me with the plugins within my Office client application, so I'll be able to provide additional classification and control from within my own Office clients, and I'll be able to control who will have access. This works for various types of documents, for mostly Office documents, but also for PDFs, PSD files, and various types of images. Azure Identity Protection, additional feature. This feature basically analyzes potential vulnerabilities for various user activities, and you will be able to control what has happened, and then you will see reports if somebody is trying to get in or too many logins from a certain page, and it's going to flag certain users for risks that are being happened or something that might be wrong with this particular user. And once a certain threshold is met, you can then do actions like you can block this user, you can send an email to your IT help desk so that they check if something is wrong with this user and things like that. When it comes to security, one of the additional features available for you within Office 365 is something called Customer Lockbox. This basically gives you control for you to control when Microsoft support is going to be allowed to connect to your tenant. So if you're dealing with a support case with Customer Lockbox, Microsoft is going to request you to enable them access, and then you will be able to either approve or deny such access so that your data is still compliant and that you are not exposing any data to Microsoft support engineers who are not part of your company or should not have access to your production data unless you allow that. And I mentioned at the beginning, Cloud App Security. That's the last bit for today. This is an additional service available out of Office 365 that basically controls entire tenancy with a built AI, and it's trying to help you to detect, again, potential intrusions within Office 365 content and stuff like that. So in this particular application, you have additional options, additional rules that you can implement and apply to your Office 365 application, and then do some of the things like prevent this user or stop sharing or things like that. So let me just jump into a demo of that one real quick. So you will see here, it's analyzing what's going on. So for example, when I started checking my demos today, it detected that I logged in from a risky IP address because I defined that Croatia is a risky location for this demo. So when I logged in, it automatically detected that. Of course, I could have configured some additional rules where I would be blocked. I don't want to do that because otherwise I won't be able to do this demo. I also configured different rules, so it alerted me when somebody from Denmark logged in. We use this as part of SharePoint, European SharePoint conference, where all the activities over there that happened in the last week of December were also tracked and detected, and I could have also blocked some users when logging in when they logged in from Denmark. One additional topic that often comes in mind is security for Microsoft Teams. Here, it's important to know that Microsoft Teams is just a shell around Office 365 group. So everything that you do and relates to security of Microsoft Teams currently is being performed by managing a group, Office 365 group that's basically within that team. But within every Microsoft team, there is a SharePoint site. And here, users still have the ability to share items on the item level, so they can share an individual document or stuff like that from within SharePoint site. So just be aware of that, and when you're planning your information architecture for Microsoft Teams, make sure that you control item level security as well, and make sure that your users know that what they are doing basically and how they can prevent that. When it comes to OneDrive, you can also block some of the options that are available. So if you don't want people to download OneDrive files, you can stop that. You can stop copying. You can stop some other various other options. And this comes with the built-in OneDrive app. You can choose some of these policies. One of the biggest problems with OneDrives and SharePoint in particular is the ability to share. So that's when it comes to security, that opens a lot of problems if you haven't configured those options properly. And you can do so within OneDrive and SharePoint admin centers, and you can define how permissive or less permissive these settings are, and you can block various types of domains, external user sharing, and stuff like that within SharePoint and OneDrive admin centers. You can also choose the same for groups and control group settings for sharing and inviting external members. So let me just quickly show you how that looks like for OneDrive. So let's say in my organization, I don't want to allow OneDrive sharing. I'll go to OneDrive Admin Center or SharePoint Admin Center, depending on what I'm trying to achieve here. And then I can say, for example, in this demo, I have completely disabled OneDrive sharing, but I can then choose a different options. I can choose to allow existing external users, or I can just give permissions so that everybody can be invited as external share or external guests to my tenant. One last bit for security when it comes to security is advanced threat protection. That is additional AI on top of Exchange, where you can control or allow Microsoft to give you more information and more analysis into what is being sent, and then Microsoft with ATP can further clean your emails from additional phishing attacks and stuff like that. But that's an additional feature of Exchange Online that's not available out of the box. So you need to enable that, and you need to have a license. So the last couple of slides are related to licensing. Most of the features that I have shown you today are a part of the premium licensing. So you need to check if your tenant has those licensing. We have two types of licenses. One is for Office 365 and the other one is for Azure AD. So some of these purchase services could be purchased alone, but most of these are available in the premium package. So for Azure AD, we have two premium packages, P1 and P2. And I'm just going to show you in the next slide which features are available in which package. So if you only have basic package, you only get multi-factor authentication. All the other things that we mentioned today, more or less, are available as part of the one of the two premium packages. The same applies for Office 365, where you will need to have a advanced, and I'm sorry, it says it's wrong here. It should say E5. So this is the E5 package, and then here as well. So this is E5 and this is E3. I mistype here, but here for all the advanced features, you would have to have E5 in order to get more data, and some of the features that we mentioned today are only available as premium packages. As I told you in the beginning, all these questions will be answered within our white paper. You're free to sign up for our white paper, and I hope just after New Year we'll be able to ship you those PDFs so you can get more information about all the topics that we just quickly mentioned today, because in 1 hour it's very hard to understand everything related to security. But three key takeaways. Take a look into your multi-factor authentication, take a look into your company branding, and take a look into your security score, and that's your starting point for configuring security in Office 365. So Shane, if we have some questions, now I think it's a good time.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Tony. That was really good. I'm going to rattle through the questions because we're nearly out of time, so just bear with me. So, first question. In the secure score, there are elements regarding mobile device security as well as Intune managed devices. Some of the settings are already set in tune for our devices, and I assume it will override mobile device settings from Exchange Online. Am I correct? Should I just ignore the elements regarding mobile device security?
Unfortunately, I have very limited knowledge of Intune, so I would not know the answer to that particular question, unfortunately. I try to focus just the Office 365 side. Intune is a little bit out of scope for me.
Okay,
And I'm so sorry, yeah.
No problem. In relation to the custom logos, this would thwart a generic attack, but isn't using the custom logo just as easy for a hacker targeting an organization specifically?
I'm pretty sure it's very easy, but for 99% of businesses, I don't think any hacker is going to recreate a Syskit login page or a small and medium enterprise login page. Of course, for Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies, that's also a threat, but they have resources to prevent even that in some ways. So the company logo is just good for small and medium companies, definitely.
Okay. Percentage-wise per user, how much more is the premium offering to get Azure conditional access, and is it worth the difference?
So I have shown the tables here, and they only relate to a security section. Azure AD Premium has more features, so I just briefly added the security features, and I think it starts with $6 per user. So you would need to look into all the features and see if they are worthwhile for what they're offering. I think as a package, it's a good option, and it's definitely going to provide you with some additional features that you are going to like. But all the pricing is available on the Microsoft webpage, so I would definitely recommend you to look into that one.
Okay. Will AIP protected documents be searchable in SPO and allow Office web apps to create previews?
Yes.
Okay. Some settings can be configured multiple places, e.g. labels and policies in AIP can be set either in Azure Domain Portal /AIP or in the Security and Compliance Portal. Which one should I preferably use?
Whoa, that's a hard one. These things are changing, and Microsoft is kind of shifting. It's not just this thing; it's everything. It's some things are duplicated, and some admin centers like OneDrive and SharePoint are currently being re-engineered, and new versions are better and easier to use. So Sometimes old version provides more features, but new one is easier to use. So it's very hard, and these things change day to day. But for labels and stuff, I would still use the security and compliance webpage for the time being. But this may change tomorrow, so just stay on top of it and look into what's going on in the other admin centers as well.
Brilliant. Tony, thank you so much for your time today and redoing your presentation from ESPC 18. Very much appreciated you taking the time with our community today.
Thank you, Shane, and take care, everybody, and have a happy Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, everybody, that was Tony Francola there from Sisket in Croatia. Just bear with me here for 1 sec. Okay, please see sharepointeurope.com/register-for-webinars for further details on all upcoming webinars. Check out our next webinar on Thursday, January 31st with Benjamin Neolin, Head of Product at ShareGate.com. You can also check out the Resource Center, which is literally jam-packed and has all these webinars, ebooks, blogs, etc. That is all for today. Thank you for joining us and take care and goodbye.